Okay, fantastic. Very good. All right, so we do have a few more people that may be joining us, but we will get started up. And so welcome everyone to the Startup Scarborough monthly webinar series. My name is Bryson Dodge. I'm one of the two program directors, and normally I'm joined by Janice Waugh, but she is actually off as an entrepreneur herself. She's off traveling the world. I think she's actually in France right now, sipping fine wine and writing about travels. So she definitely has the best job of at least she and I. And so in this series, in the monthly webinar series, we explore entrepreneurship here in our community in Scarborough. And we've been profiling entrepreneurs all year and hearing about their stories, hearing about their trials, their tribulations, and feeling really just inspired by everything that we've been seeing in our community. This is our new time at 5 p.m. In the past, these have been run at 7 p.m., but we're hopeful that this 5 p.m. time slot's a little bit better for everybody. And so our agenda for this evening, we're going to be having a fantastic conversation with Vito Jameson, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. Followed by that, we will have a Q&A period. And so if you have any questions for Vito, you're welcome to either put them into the chat function, as Kevin had done earlier, or you can use the raise hand function and ask him directly. And either way is certainly fine. This event is being recorded and will be posted onto our YouTube page along with our LinkedIn page and in the coming days. And so if you have any friends who are not able to attend, you're certainly able to pass the link along to them and ensure that they get the content here. I would also like to start the event with a land acknowledgement. The land that I am standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas in Chippewa bands. And so without any further ado, I wanted to jump right into the main event. And I'm going to introduce Vito, and then we're going to go through some questions with him. But Vito Jameson, I'll do a little quick bio for you, and then you can let me know if I missed any details, because it's a fantastic business and a fantastic story. And so Vito Jameson is a dad and a full-time social worker, and he makes extra money by doing voiceover work. He does everything from prank calls to pre-recorded sales messages. He has even pretended to be Santa Claus. How does he get work? He uses Fiverr, an online marketplace where people sell all kinds of services and make money without leaving home. And so he's going to be speaking to us today about how Fiverr works, what sells, and also share a few of his secrets of success. So welcome, Vito.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So please start with a little bit of background. Tell us about your job, what your connection is with Scarborough. Let's hear it.
So as you mentioned, I'm a registered social worker. I have been for 20-something years now. My connection with Scarborough, both my children were born in Scarborough. I lived in Scarborough. I don't live in Scarborough right now, but still have quite a bit of family that lives in Scarborough, and a number of friends who I'm constantly telling in the downtown area that Scarborough is part of Toronto. It's not the suburbs. It's where, in fact, depending which way you're driving, Scarborough is where Toronto begins. So I have deep roots in Scarborough.
I love that. I love that the Toronto is, or Scarborough is where Toronto begins. That's a much better way to look at it.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And so I mean, we can already hear it. You've got a terrific voice. My mother always told me I've got a face for radio. But when did it occur to you that you could start making money with those tenor tones that you've got?
Well, it started with me really with my voice dropped when I was like 12 or 13, and people just kind of like were just kind of shocked at the bass coming out of it. And in school, when it came to narrations and readings for Shakespeare or what have you, they would ask me to do it. There was no money involved at that point. But later on, people would always ask me to be the speaker for whatever the reason was or the event was. And so I started doing that, and people would ask me, and I would be happy to do that. And some people would start asking me to do like prank calls, or if they, at the time when I was a kid, you had to have an adult order the pizza. So if it was a bunch of teenagers, they wanted someone to order a pizza, it would be me, or on voicemails, or whatever the case may be. And then over time, employers actually would ask me to, a boss might ask me to do something on the company voicemail, or the voicemail tree, and I would be the one doing that. And I was actually recruited for radio at one point, and the when I was recruited for radio, they were saying, they were being very real and saying, yeah, we like you. This is what you could make in the field. But at the time, newbies really could get moved around all over Canada. And I was in university at the time. I was like, you know what? I want to finish my degree. I I don't want to wind up hither, tither, and yon. And so it was like, okay, well, there's something there. Someone's willing to pay me to be on radio and is willing to just, not even go through journalism school or broadcasting. They just wanted me for radio. And so, okay, there's something there. And so I toyed with the idea of maybe it could be something like doing the weekend kind of things. But I never, at that point, never really got into it until a friend, um, her daughter was afraid of Santa Claus, but still wanted the gifts. So she had me call, and I pretended to be Santa, and the child was no longer afraid of Santa after that call. But then other people wanted me to be Santa, and it's like, okay, well, let's charge a little money here, and that's kind of how I started to slowly break into it.
I love that. That's awesome. So it was Santa Claus that got you into this.
Yeah, Santa would have been my first paying gig. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And one of the other programs that Startup Scarborough that we work with is an entrepreneurial program where we're taking a couple of individuals and helping them to start businesses. And one of the concepts you mentioned really rings true with me, and that is that the traditional path would be to go radio, and when that door, not that necessarily closed, but when it wasn't kind of the avenue that you thought that you wanted to go with, you still took the skill and pivoted. And I think from an
Yeah.
entrepreneurial perspective, that's so important no matter what you're doing, right? Whether it's voiceover work or if it's, retail, or if you're, selling something, it doesn't matter. The point is that, you kind of pivot and you evolve with what the world gives you. And that's a fantastic
Exactly.
experience.
Yeah,
Ever think
exactly.
about where you would be if you had gone the radio route?
Good question. I probably would have gone to a US market. When I was recruited, it was in Windsor. I was at University of Windsor, and the US market is so big. I probably would have gone that route, although they have the same problem. I have friends in radio on both sides of the border, and you can be here in Toronto one day, and you can be in Yellowknife next month and somewhere else. So, especially now that stations are conglomerating, there's probably like 3 or 4 really big names that are buying up everybody. Um, and so that was, again, that was 20 something years ago, that there were some big names, but now there's really big names that are buying up everything. And yeah, I probably would have wound up in the US market, is where I would have
Yeah.
headed.
And now that decision to kind of not go the radio route, did that feel like the safer route for you? Like, there's always kind of that trade-off where you kind of look at it and you say, this is the safe, easy way for me to go. This is the riskier way. At the time, do you recall, was there kind of one way that seemed like the road less traveled?
Yeah, it was definitely, there was a safety factor. I really wanted to finish my degree. I was actually working on a second degree at that point, and that was my social work degree. So it was really important that to me at that time that not get interrupted. Had it been offered again, like right before graduation or around that time, yeah, I probably would have done it at that point.
Mhm.
Um, and certainly people who go through broadcasting programs, there's a lot to be learned there. I'm constantly learning, even though I'm not in broadcasting per se, with voice and the technology that changes and what people want and that kind of thing. There's a lot of changes. Um, yeah, but it was definitely about um, at least finishing my social work degree and then carrying on from there.
Yeah, fantastic. It's those kind of forks in the road, right? That we
Yeah,
look back on and kind of you know constantly think about. So that's fantastic.
yeah,
Now, tell us a little bit about Fiverr. I mean, it's not a platform that I'm terribly familiar with, and maybe some of our viewers may not be as well. But tell us a little bit about it, how you got started, how it works.
yeah. It's a really great platform. It allows you to take whatever skill or service that you have and offer it to people. You set the price, but Fiverr started off where everything cost $5. So when I first started, for example, I would do a voicemail for $5. I would do up to 1 minute of a script for $5, and then $5 for every minute after, or you could set different prices. So it's a platform where you look at what your talent is, what you're willing to do, and you use keywords. So, for example, the keyword for my voice gigs, one of my voice gigs is, I will give you a voiceover in my baritone voice. So the keywords are in there are voiceover. So if someone who's looking for a voiceover artist, they would come across me as well as other people. Um, but baritone is my value proposition that sets me apart from other people. And also, you would there's a description. You would give a description. It's kind of like a little ad, saying, giving your background. So talking about my background, a little bit about who I've worked with, what I'm willing to do, how long of um, how long of a job it may be. So there's some people when they're just getting started, they uh, may do longer pieces, um, or what you're not willing to do. Some people are not willing to swear, for example. So they'll say what they're willing to do, what they're not willing to do, um, what their strengths are. So you do want to lead with strengths. So I, for example, cannot do accents. I'm just not good at doing accents. So I don't say I'm not good at accents. However, I say that I can do narration, I can do radio spots, voicemails, and it's led to some creative things. For example, one person asked me to do the voice of Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, and I did that. Some other people saw the sample work, because once you've done some work, it can be up in your sample portfolio, and there was enough people asking me to do that actually became another gig. So it's building on your strengths, looking at your strengths, So, for example, let's just say you have strong English skills and strong editing skills in terms of writing. You could offer to edit people's term papers, books, magazine articles, whatever the case may be, and you can put that as your title. For example, um, I will proofread and edit your blog articles, or I will proofread and edit your term papers or your thesis. And if you have, let's just say you were a former PhD student who was good at that, or just someone who's good at that, you could list who you've edited for, what types of things you've edited for, how many words you will edit for that $5, and prices that follow afterwards. So if you were looking at doing a whole entire PhD thesis or dissertation rather, what that would look like, what that pricing structure would look like. Uh, you set your own prices. So you, as mentioned, when in the beginning, you probably are going to want to make sure your prices are lower than other people and that you will do more. But as you start to get positive reviews, you can start to adjust your prices and see what other people are doing out there. And if you can put your twist on it, um, then you have something to offer.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I love that last piece you just talked about, how, even if there's other people out there doing it, you can kind of put your own twist on it.
Yeah.
And there's that notion of an individual value proposition that you bring. And I had this discussion with and one of the entrepreneurs that we work with around, if somebody else is in the market doing the same thing, how do you differentiate yourself? And there are nuanced, very small ways that you can do that, but they can make a big difference in developing that customer relationship. And so maybe on that, the notion of a customer relationship is a lot of the work that you do kind of one off, or do you have repeat clients? And how do you kind of manage those,
Yeah.
turn that one time client into a repeat client?
So I do have, I would say most of my clients are one-offs. However, I do have a number of repeat clients, and some of them have actually said, okay, I'd actually rather work with you off of Fiverr so that we can deal directly. One of the things with Fiverr is that all the communication is expected to be within the platform. Uh, because they take 20% of of no, yeah, 20% of the fee. So that's how they put up all the technology, all they have the platform, and for that they take 20%. So they don't want to be cut out of the deal. When it comes to my one-offs, my goal is 100% satisfaction all the time, even when they're difficult people, not just picky or particular. Even when they're very difficult, I will work to make sure that they are happy. One, because that's how I'm built. Two, um, one negative review um, can bring your averages down, and then you get into a situation. So in the platform, they review you, but you also review them as a uh, as a buyer, kind of like Lyft or Uber and that kind of thing. And I'm not the type of person that wants to get into a situation where if someone left me a bad review, that I feel like I'm being defensive and explaining what happened, um, or saying that they were just too difficult. I don't want to get into that kind of thing. Um, so I always aim for good reviews, which is the way to build and maintain your your standing on the platform and in the eyes of other people. When it comes to repeat, I've had a number of repeat for voice. And for I do other things on Fiverr in terms of narrations within the voice category, but also copywriting as well, which was also another takeoff. I did copywriting before, but a number of times um, people needed their scripts edited a little bit or didn't quite make sense, and I was at first I was giving the advice for free, and then I said, you know what, let me charge for that. And there's times where people that just want me to just write, then I take it away with the voice. So when it comes to the repeat, you know, you're building, it's really building the relationship. Um, there are times where I will say, I'm glad you're happy. Well, in general, I'll say, I'm glad you're happy. Um, if there's, feel free to come back to me again, or if you have colleagues that you work with, I'm always looking to work with more people. And you know, friends tell friends good news, so feel free to do that. And so there's a number of people. Actually, there have been times where I have put my profile on vacation mode because I've been so busy, and I'll only work with my repeat customers. Those are good problems to have when you're that kind of busy.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. And that's, I mean, that's kind of the goal for everyone, right? Is to get to that point where you can take your foot off the gas, even just a touch, to kind of balance it out.
Yes.
How long did it kind of take you to get to a point where you felt comfortable, where you know you're up on there, you've got some repeat clients, you're kind of feeling, you know, I got a hang of this. You know, what was that timeline like?
Good question. I would say it probably took a month or two. I began with Fiverr around the very beginning, when it came on board, around 2010. I I'll tell a story in a little bit, but of how I really got into it. But um, I started and I was doing voice and on-screen presenter work. And one of my first clients had a lot of feedback in terms of lighting and shadows and that kind of thing, which I didn't have the professional lights, green screens, and that kind of thing at the time. And I just saw it as a way to learn. They wanted me to do it. They said what they liked. They said what they didn't like. Um, and it can be nerve-wracking to get critiques on people. And criticism is not a bad word, but usually has a bad connotation. I saw it as an opportunity to learn. And so, yeah, probably about the couple months is when I was consistently um, not getting, I would turn something in and they would accept it the first time. So at the first two or three, there was some, okay, send it back and change this or change that. And, you know, you don't want, no one wants to feel like they're not up to standard. So it could feel a little, could have feel like I'm a little bit in grade two and the teacher's handing the paper back to correct it. But again, I saw it as an opportunity. And actually, one of my actor friends helped me with lighting and that kind of thing, and it became fun. Um, I really see Fiverr as even though it's the Fiverr brand, it's my own little business. I control when I want to do it, who I want to work with. There are times I turn down jobs that don't meet um, my values, um, and getting that customer satisfaction. Once once the I get that review, um, that it still feels like the first time when I get a positive review. I go for that's how I'm built and how Yeah, I want that hero cookie at the end. So yeah, it's a great feeling there.
Very nice. Now, I don't know about the hero cookies or any of you, but I've had too many cookies over COVID, so I'm on a break from cookies until I can fit back into my pre-COVID clothing. But
Yep.
you mentioned kind of that discouragement when you get some criticism, and I'm drawn to that stat that we all hear around how 85% of new businesses fail. And I think a major contributor to that is that exact moment that you referenced, where you get some feedback from a client. It's not, the green check mark that you got in grade two. And all of a sudden you start thinking, oh, geez, this is just not working out. I'm not made for this. But you didn't see it that way. You saw it as, this is an opportunity for me to learn, to internalize what they were telling me, and to improve. So what was it that allowed you or to kind of feel that way and not look at it as a negative? Was there anything, maybe the way you're raised, some of your thought process on it? Like how did you not let it overcome you?
There's a number of factors. I grew up in a strict home, so I was it really there was not a lot of praise. It was just kind of expected to do it, go succeed, and come back with the A, and or whatever it is that I was expected to do. Um, but for me, I back then I did a lot of reading, and even now I get little daily messages, positive messages on my phone to remind me to think positive. It, and actually, as a social worker, um, and the counseling I do with my patients, a lot life circumstances, a lot of how you react to it and how you decide to handle the information impacts how what's going to happen moving forward. Um, I liked the voice acting. I like doing the presentation work, and I wanted to keep doing it. Also had quite young children at the time who were in swimming lessons, dance, all that kind of stuff. So I needed that second source of income, and I just was not going to. I was not going to give up. I was going to figure out, and especially at such a low price point, um, it wasn't the end of the world if I didn't get it right the first time. So I was able to tweak and learn, and it was something that I could do in my spare time. So it wasn't this, there are deadlines, and you set your deadlines as well. Uh, but it wasn't the end of the world if I didn't get it right the first time. So it was something that I could conquer in small bites,
Mhm.
and then I found a way to make it fun.
Nice.
It was fun for me, but I also found, okay, I'm going to make sure. I One of the things that I like to do is I'm old school in that I like um, actors and artists from 40s, 50s, 60s, and I'm a big Rat Pack fan. And Frank Sinatra was famous for doing his movies, all his scenes in one take. And it became a game for me to say, if I could do something in one take, make the $5, and as I raise the prices, 10, 15, 20, whatever. Um, if I could do it in one take, I would reward myself and say, one take Sinatra. And that just became my little thing, a little reward for myself. And if it didn't come back and they were happy the first take, it was just like, great. There were times where I've done projects where I have made a couple hundred in just an hour, by just knocking one thing out right after the other. So um, it's pretty neat. It's like, hey, I didn't have to become a psychologist or a doctor to make $200 an hour. I just did it just by talking. So um, found a way to make it fun.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very, very cool. And that's what they say, right? I mean, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
yeah.
And I love that. I love that mantra. Maybe you could just share a little bit more about Fiverr and what viewers may not know that they can use Fiverr for.
So the is what's you can be either a buyer or a seller on Fiverr. So um, there have been times where I have been a buyer because there's been a project that required multiple parts, and a person has said, "Go ahead and arrange everything for me, and you give me a set price." And so, for example, there's you may have seen some of these whiteboard videos, for example, where it's a hand drawing as someone's talking. I would subcontract the person to the whiteboard action portion of it. I didn't have the software to do that, and so I was able to contract them to do that. So I was a buyer and a seller, and then charging a rate on top of that. Um, think of Fiverr as a way to get paid for what you're good at. So I gave the example of editing. There's with editing. Um, some people are there's people who on there who um, give advice in terms of technical things like carpentry or computer problems. Uh, your people may be doing things like they might do. There's some people who do things like tutoring, which can be a little bit awkward on that platform. Um, Trying to think of some of the other things that people do on there right now. I really concentrate on my own. There's people who've been on there giving dating advice. There's been people who have, for example, a LinkedIn profile. There's people who will go in and review your LinkedIn file for one
Hmm.
price. They will change your LinkedIn profile for another price. Um, it's really a platform that if you have a skill or if you solve problems, what is a problem that other people have or they might need on the fly, um, that you can solve for them. So like the editing, LinkedIn, um, um, Facebook. So people who, when you want Facebook for business, your headers, a lot of people don't know how to do the photoshopping, for example. Um, and you can create a profile and say, I will create a Facebook header for you. I will Photoshop such and such for you. At one point, for example, I wanted to change my personal Facebook picture to a picture of me and Betty White. I'm a big Betty White fan, and so I got somebody to do that from an old TV show that she was on back in the '50s of her husband on the show, and I got my face superimposed on that. And um, yeah, that person probably doesn't even remember that they did that for me, but I got a kick out of that. Um, yeah, photoshopping is big on there. Balancing Excel or reconfiguring Excel spreadsheets, um, realigning things in Word so you get them formatted the right way. Just all the little things that you kind of say, I don't know how to do this, or I wish
Yeah.
that I could get somebody to do that. Um, a lot of things that people, if they've probably typed it into Google, how do I do blank? They probably or quite possibly could wind up on Fiverr
Hmm.
for someone. Fiverr is really good about um, having a gig that says, how do I fill in the blank? And
Right.
so for buyers and sellers, it's just a great place for people to meet. Again, one-offs, but then there's also people who will um, have ongoing. A couple other gigs that come to mind. There are people who will be your salesperson for an hour or two at a time, closing sales. translator, translating documents. If you have an ability, you
Mhm.
probably can find a way to have a gig on Fiverr.
Hmm, fantastic. And it sounds like it's a lot of those very sort of niche or specific skills that that you may not be able to ask in your immediate network of friends and family if anybody needs help with something like that. But you put it on the internet with your Fiverr, and the entire world is now your market, right? So
Yes.
that sounds fantastic. So we're gonna open it up to the question and answer portion in just a minute. But I did want to ask you about one last sort of concept. But a reminder for anybody, if you're thinking about a question for Vito, you can either use the raise hand function in Zoom. You can type it into the chat, or you're welcome to just unmute yourself and chime in. But before we get there, the last question I wanted to just pick your brain on was that notion of inertia, right? I mean, we're all kind of set in our ways. We've got a routine, and what was it for you that allowed you to kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of get up off the couch and start this business? Like, what was it that got you going?
For me, it was actually, I got ticked off at a former employer. They were creating a set of videos to draw in customers and to also use within the company. And they liked my voice. They asked me to do the voice for it. I said sure. I gave them a price that I thought was reasonable, well below SAG and ATRA rates, and they said, no, we'd like you to do it during work hours and keep up with your regular caseload. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, okay, it's time to look at doing voice regularly. Like, this is a company that could have paid me that money. Um, I would have been happy to do it, and I wouldn't ask for any kind of credit or anything like that necessarily. And they weren't willing to do it, and they were basically trying to get me to do a huge job for free. So I started looking into how can I actually talk to an actor friend, and he talked about the unions and all that kind of thing, and having to take time off work, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to give up my day job. So I literally typed in where how can I do voiceover, or something along those lines, or how can I do it for cash or under the table or something like that. And Fiverr popped up, and I looked and examined it, and it said, okay, I can do this. And it because it with a low price point, um, I was still going to always turn in quality work. But if someone's looking for something for $5, they're not there wouldn't necessarily be this big they couldn't necessarily expect big TV or big radio studio quality. So I felt confident enough in that situation that if I'm dealing with a real person who's going on a platform for $5, there's some wiggle room here for learning, for adjusting, and for both of us to walk away happy. So it was okay. This is a great platform um, to get started. Um, it didn't require a broadcasting degree. It didn't require a big fancy studio. It didn't require me disrupting my life. It was okay. I can get started. I can do this, and in many ways, I was getting paid to practice in many ways, because I was starting at a low entry point. People were happy with what I was doing. When they wanted tweaks, I gave it to them. And yeah, that for me, that was just like, okay, this is a way to get started without having to jump in the big waters. And quite frankly, unless someone just walked up to me and said, hey, we want you on this film set, or we want you on this particular major project. I prefer it this way. It's completely at my discretion and time wise, and um, I don't have to take a day off work to go down to a studio and do it. I can just do it right from the comfort of my home, and yeah, it just works for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the speaker we had on last month had a similar kind of experience in the sense of being in control of the business. It wasn't a business where you needed to start with huge capital and you needed all kinds of equipment and training, and you don't need a formal business license and all this kind of stuff. You can just kind of start small and kind of grow it, uh, kind of as you are comfortable, and the sky's the limit from there. But I
Yeah,
love that concept where you talk about just kind of starting small, controlling it, having some work-life balance, maintaining your full-time job. That's fantastic. Uh, would love to hear just a little bit more about kind of pricing, and kind of started at $5. Now it's it can go up from there. How do you kind of put a price on your time and what you're putting in there? Because it's not, or what you're producing, because it's not like a widget where you can say, this cost me $2 to make, therefore I need to sell it for at least three. What was that kind of thought process like for you?
yeah. So I started off $5. It was just that was the buy-in, and I decided, well, I looked at what other people were doing, and at the time there wasn't that many people on at the time. I looked at what their pricing was, and they were $5 for say 30 seconds. And I said, well, let me start off by giving 2 minutes worth. So I'm giving, I can't lower the price, and I didn't want to lower. Five is low enough. Um, and I started off giving the 2 minutes, so they got more for their money as initial. I got the positive ratings, and then I looked at, okay, well, I would need to do 20 of these, or four of these rather, to make $20 an hour as a reasonable rate. And so then I what I did was I said, okay, let me do these. I started lowering it down to 1 minute, and then I went down to 30-second clips. Now narrations, and so I've done narrations for different things, for like for videos, for cartoon strips and that kind of thing, which take longer, and you can negotiate a price. But basically, I said, okay, I want to make about on average 25 to 30 an hour, for doing this. And so I made sure that I had lots and lots of positive reviews. I needed to be worth my time. So I didn't want to just stay in a world where I was only making $5 per a project, even if they were short. So I I lengthened, or I'm sorry, I shortened the time. So first it started 2 minutes. I started lowering the time, and that allowed me to do more projects in less time, so that it would be um, really would be more worth my time, and that I wasn't just working for below minimum wage, because this isn't it's not a job, it's your own little micro business. And so I thought, okay, what is my value? What are people willing to pay? And one of the neat things within Fiverr is there's an option to tip you. And it got to the point where my tips were 10, 15, $20, where the job itself was only five. So I was like, well, the market is saying I'm getting $25 for this one job. So I started looking at, okay, here's the price, here's the time, how many words per minute. Yeah, breaking it down to how many words are spoken words are in a minute. And I just played around with those numbers so that it made sense for me and what I wanted to bring in on a daily basis.
What an excellent way to approach it, right? I mean, on one hand, you've got the bottom end of the pricing, which is that $5 base, and then at the top end, you've got a sense of kind of what you want to make on an hourly, and then you're also able to kind of drill down and say, what am I putting in here on a per word or per minute basis? So you've got a really good handle on what your pricing is,
Yeah.
and that's a great concept for every business owner, is to know kind of what your costs are and then what your prices are. So now we did have one question that came in privately through the chat, and that was the question was, what have been your most significant failure, and what did you learn from it? And so maybe not most significant failure, but if you may perhaps talk about the concept of failure, or if you're comfortable talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Someone convinced me to try and do an accent as an example, and they were not happy with it. I told them I couldn't do an accent, um, but they wanted my voice specifically. Um, and then in the end, I just said, okay, let's just part ways. Let's just cancel the order altogether so it doesn't show up on your stats as a buyer and my stats. Another time, a person said, I love your voice. Make sure you stay on the deep end of it, of the register when you're doing this. And in the end, they said it was too deep. You sounded almost like a horror movie character. And I remember that one because I was excited about that project, and they weren't happy in the end. And it was it was in the early days. It was only $5, and they just said, okay, you put in the time, you gave me what I asked for. I probably should have been more specific. Um, the when people One of the things within Fiverr is, when they send it back, you get this red um, notification that says rejected. And I don't like that word, that it comes up rejected. So it sends a little something to my heart. And so I see that, and it's like, okay, how am I going to fix this? Before I even open it, I'm going, okay, what is it they're looking for? How am I going to fix it? So I'm going in with an attitude of, I'm going to fix it. And I find out what they want. And usually it's something like, okay, this sentence sounded, it just didn't sound as clear as the previous sentence, or something small. Um, it's usually something small, and that can be fixed. So rejection is part of, or redos is just kind of a part of life. If I was in a sales job and I met my sales this month, great, you met your sales. And then the next month, um, I didn't quite make it, but if you average the two together, I actually made it. It's like, no, you didn't meet targets this month. So look at it as an opportunity to fix it. And because it's my name that's out there, it's like, okay, my name is important, and I want them to be happy with the work that Vito has done. So I don't get really down about it. There have been times where it's been frustrated, where I may have had to send back more than once, and that's where it gets a little like, okay, is this? There are moments where I'm like, is this really worth it? But in the end, I just get it done, and I move on.
Fantastic. No, that's a big piece of being a business owner as well, and managing your time, and kind of get this contract done, and get on to the next one. And so I appreciate your time, Vito, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time who signed on. We are at 6 o'clock, and so we are kind of at the time that we're gonna wrap up. So I just want to take a moment, Vito. Thank you so much for joining us. This has
You're
been
welcome.
incredible. Just hearing your voice right now, I can totally tell exactly what all the voiceover work that you would do would be incredible. And thank you to everyone who joined us. This has been another successful webinar for us. Our next monthly webinar will be on Tuesday, November the 2nd at 5 p.m. We run these on the first Tuesday of every month. And so with that, once again, Vito, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Very good.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
good
We were
night.
wonderful.
Bye now.